a habit.
This is true. This is very, very true.
All right, now.
My aunt used to say to me that swearing shows you don't have a command of the English language.
Yeah, well, not swearing doesn't prove you do, but we'll find out today.
There we go.
Okay, now let's see. Twitch has accepted your stream.
Okay.
YouTube has accepted your stream.
Uh-huh.
And Facebook has accepted your stream. Now I'm going to send you the link, okay?
Okay, and if you could just put it on my page, I'd be more than happy.
Okay, I will.
Thank you. I got to sit on my feet. Hang on a minute. I got to get on something. I'm kind of low here. Okay, that's better. Okay. All right, so we want to go a little bit to the left. All right.
Okay, I have just posted the show on your page, Virginia.
Thank you, Richard.
And I hope it went through.
I'm sure it did. Not concerned.
Shall we officially start the show?
Mason, you ready?
Ready to rock.
Okay, let's go.
All right. Look at the timer that's on the screen, and when it says on the air, you are on the air, okay?
Okay, thank you, Richard. Welcome, everyone, to Illuminating Forward, the podcast. And here we are at Think Twice Radio, the home of the future. And we have a very special guest today. We have best-selling author, paranormal investigator, psychic, and psychic historian, well, ghost historian in Western New York and beyond. We have Mason Winfield. And he's also involved in the Witches' Ball, from what I understand. So I want to welcome Mason here to the show. Thank you, Mason, for being with us tonight. I really do appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this for a few months now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, Virginia, I bet you say that to all the guests.
No, I don't. You can watch them.
Okay, I'll check that out.
You can watch them. You know, I was very intrigued that you have authored 18 books. And
Yeah.
some of them are really interesting, like the Rose Witch. Can you explain to me about the Rose Witch? Can you tell me a little bit about it? Because it was very interesting about the history of the Banshee. You were saying in the write-up that you put a different take onto like the Banshee. And me being of Irish and Scottish descent, I'm very interested in what you have to say on that topic.
Sure. Well, first of all, the Rose Witch. I've had a number of big surprises in my study of the upstate supernatural / paranormal. And one of them, I should make a top 10 list and give a talk someday. But
you should.
One of them is the fact, because it is interesting, but I started to notice fairly early on that people's experiences, particularly psychic experiences like ghosts and visitations and stuff like that, that they appear to be influenced by their ancestry. It's like you got different stories out of First Nations people, than you got out of the Irish or the Germans or, African American people. And I started to notice, I mean, you would have thought that, well, a ghost's a ghost and a UFO is a UFO, and what's it matter what somebody's heritage is? And a lot of the time it doesn't matter at all, but sometimes it does. And there are certain types of stories you get a lot from certain ethnicities. And I decided that this was a, Buffalo area. We love our heritages, our ethnicities, and I thought
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
this is a subject that isn't known much about. And they used to call us a melting pot. Maybe we are now, but for most of our history, we were a quilt. We were a patchwork. The Germans lived here, the
Yes.
Irish lived here, and it's only been maybe within the past, 50 years that people have really, maybe even 30, that people have really started moving around.
Yeah,
And
Mason, they used to call us Little Philly because of our different neighborhoods. That's what they used to call Buffalo, Little Philly, because of the different ethnicities living in certain areas across the city. You're right.
where were
It
you
was
when I was
bad.
doing the interviews for this book? I wish I had interviewed you. You would have helped. But at any rate, as far
No,
as
listen, I heard it's wonderful. I heard your book is wonderful, but go ahead.
oh, thank you. I think it's all right. I regarding the Banshee, I don't take a different presentation of the Banshee at all. I take the one that's found among the Irish and the Scottish, the Gaelic people. And I have to contest some of the impressions that TV gives us about a lot of things, including the Banshee. The Banshee is no blood-drinking demon. The Banshee.
No, not at all. Not at all.
The Banshee is the message, not the messenger. It announces the death of one of the clan heads of one of the great old Gaelic families. And somewhere in the world, as I understand it, somewhere in the world, somebody right now is like the head of Clan Duffy or Clan McLaughlin, or there's a clan head out there. And
Right, exactly.
because of the diaspora, the Scottish people, Irish people, they're all over the world. But on the night that the elder, whoever it is about to die, this ghastly wailing will be heard. And I've heard that the Banshee has been heard in like New Zealand and Scotland and
Oh,
the
that's
United States.
fascinating. I love it.
Well, I've interviewed people in the United States who had a tradition of not exactly the Banshee, but an announcer by sound,
Yes.
like before a
Yes.
death. Actually, I heard that Lord Mountbatten, the Anglo-Irish aristocrat whom the IRA blew up on his yacht, I forget the
Yes.
year, 70s. I heard that back at his castle, before that bomb went off, they reported hearing the Banshee.
Really?
Yeah, isn't that cool?
That is
Tough
that
out
is
there.
fascinating. People have said, like exactly what you said, that certain ethnicities have certain traditions, and like little people are known throughout the world, but in different forms. Correct? Would you say that's true about the little people, about the
Sure.
fairies?
Yeah. There are legends all over the world about a race of human-like beings that are other. They're different, and they're not all the same size or habits or anything. But traditions about the little people can be surprisingly analogous. And that was another of my big surprises. When I started doing the research for these books, I expected I'd get a bunch of UFOs and a bunch of ghosts. And, I didn't think I was ever going to run into anybody who said they saw a fairy. And I've very seldom had anyone say it like that, but yet they'll describe really supernaturally small little beings. And the funny thing is, though, that they behave very largely according to the habits of the old folklore. So when you interview
Really?
somebody, yeah. So when you interview somebody who says, I don't know how to explain this, but I saw this little being and it was there and it did this, and They very often fulfill the old patterns. It almost makes you think that whatever your living witness saw is what the old timers saw, that got exaggerated into story by storytelling into folklore.
Uh-huh. Now, do we have little people in Western New York?
Well, I'm not saying I've ever seen one, but
I've never seen one either.
yeah, I wish
But I do believe that they exist.
Well, something makes people say things. And first of all, our First Nations friends, the Seneca, Tuscarora, the Longhouse people, they have traditions about fairy beings, little ones.
They do? I didn't know this.
Oh,
this is fascinating.
Sure. You should have read a few more of my books, or at least relevant.
I know. Right. The shadow of the shadows of the Western Door talks about the Iroquois, correct?
Yeah, there's a whole chapter on them and their supernaturalism, and I realized, well, first of all, there was an article on the little people in there, but it's kind of folkloric, It doesn't involve stories with living witnesses, and those can be gripping. People's stories about the little people, just remarkable. But I will tell you this, it's pretty private to the Longhouse people, Iroquoians, the Haudenosaunee. They don't like talking about it with outsiders. And I have been led to believe that I'm not earning myself many points by writing about them myself, And I give talks on the reservations and I have many friendships and good relationships there. But I know some of the traditionalists aren't real happy that I'm writing this stuff down. But I'm thinking to myself, man, if somebody doesn't write this down, it could
get lost. Right, it could get lost.
And the culture on the reservations is changing. They don't have as many traditionalists. They don't have many elders. They don't have as many preservers. And, at a point in the near future, when somebody somewhere realizes that this stuff was really important and it was important to the soul and shouldn't be lost, what I'm trying to do is to be one of the guys who writes that down.
Right. Absolutely. Well, you're doing a service, for not just mankind or the reservation. You're doing a service for mankind, actually, because these stories are important to all cultures, whether you're indigenous or not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm a white Anglo-Saxon, and we lost everything. We lost so much of our ancestors' spiritual culture, and I'm not sure all of it was our fault. In comes the Roman Empire and tries to eliminate Druidism. That was Celtic paganism. And they did a pretty good job of it. And then in comes the Christian church, whom I'm not beating up on at all, but let's just say that they had their ideas about how to help people. And you had this double whammy on the native spirituality of Northwest Europe. And so you've got a lot of people who, we won about the last 600 years of history, but we lost our spirituality, at least our indigenous spirituality. Christianity, yes. Which again, I'm not piling on Christianity, but it is a Mediterranean religion. It's developed by a different language family, a different mindset. And I think that was part of the reason for the Protestant Reformation, is because Christianity, as it was being presented by the Catholic Church, was just starting to wear people out. They have a different mindset, and so they needed to make some adaptations. So I think that probably took us off the track, but
yeah. Well, the indigenous across the globe, their spirituality has been wiped out. But in this country, it was illegal until I think 1975 for the indigenous to practice their spirituality. And the Lakota went underground with the smoke dance and what have you.
Yeah, I did not know about that law, and I don't I gotta say, I don't know of it being enforced, because I've known Seneca and Tuscarora, people who were openly and devoutly practicing their spirituality long before that, long before 1975 or whatever
Well,
date.
that is wonderful news. I'm glad to hear that because when I learned about the law, I was like very upset and outraged. I
Well,
was outraged,
you
and
should, as
they
you should be.
and they overturned it in 1975. I was like,
Well,
wow.
I've never heard of the law being enforced. I think it was one of those dingbat laws. And, sometimes in our day and age, people who want to get you whipped up to hate something will make up a lot of stuff, So I don't know. I'll talk to, I'm going to see my Algonquin friend, Mike Bastine, pretty soon. And he's pretty up on these things. I'll check that out with him and see what he thinks. But I mean, that's a terrible law. I
Terrible.
hope it was
It
never
was-
seriously
It
made.
it was terrible. Well, what happened to the indigenous in this country was like it was complete genocide. So the
No, it
whole
wasn't.
thing is very
It
upsetting.
wasn't genocide. No, if it was genocide, there wouldn't be any left. It was a tragedy. It was unfair. But sometimes history sucks. 90% of the native people who were killed died of disease. And the disease was generally, the Europeans had cattle diseases from living with the animals. There's a book out there called Guns, Germs, and Steel by a guy named Jerry Diamond. And Diamond is no conservative, He lays it on the Europeans where they deserve it. And I share his outrage, but I don't think genocide is a word we ought to use. Back it up.
Okay. I'm not
A lot
going
of
to
stuff
debate
sucks,
that with you.
That one doesn't fly. Anyway, keep going. Or that's my opinion.
Okay.
That way.
Okay, well, that's right, and you're entitled to your opinion as well as me, and I'm not going to debate that with you because that
Well,
would take
I
us
hope I
off
was
the
being
topic of the
respectful
show.
to you.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are very respectful. This is the way of this country. We're supposed to have debates. We're supposed to have difference of opinion. This is how we learn from each other.
I agree
Mason.
with you completely. And furthermore, if there's a chance for me to learn something, I'm always up for it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Now, one more book I want to discuss. The latest book that you wrote about the paranormal investigators that are based in Buffalo, New York. That has got to be fascinating. Did you have a lot of fun writing that book?
Yeah, I did. Actually, it's about it's a loosely veiled, fictionalized, and kind of a rendition of some of the stuff that my friend Mike Bastine and I have gotten on. I mean, people call me for help sometimes, and they seriously overestimate my aptitudes. Like somebody will call up and they think their house is possessed or something, and they want me to come over and do something about it. And I go, what am I going to do? I'm a white guy with a laptop, And it's like, but when I think somebody is in serious, when I think the case might be serious enough that it could benefit from a little indigenous wisdom, because the white guys don't know how to do this anymore. And every once in a while, I'll run into a situation in which the lowest common denominator of what's going on is somebody's getting cursed.
Really? Oh, this is interesting.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And again, I'm not telling you I'm a wizard and I believe in my ability to cast a curse. I'm saying that there are times you look at a situation and this is the evidence. And what theory is left standing that explains the apparent facts? And if there's only one theory left, somebody's getting cursed and it works, well, I don't see why we shouldn't consider that as a possibility.
Right,
And
exactly.
I don't have any magical aptitude, and I've never trained with anyone who said they did. But for instance, my Algonquin friend Mike, he's got a lot of lines out, And he's not someone I think who could or would curse you, but I do think he's just seen a lot. Let's put it that way. And very often,
Okay.
he and some of the other people he knows who have they've kept their heritage of spirituality. See, the white guys don't have it anymore. A lot of Native people preserve medicine people and healers, and they can do it. And it's at least worth bringing them in and having them check a case out, see what they think. And some of the time, they seem to be quite helpful.
Really? That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
My experience, yeah. And, some of those cases get a little scary,
I can imagine. Now, you're a paranormal investigator, so can you tell me some of your investigations? I'm sure the audience is really interested.
Hey, yeah, well, I hope they are, but who told you I was a paranormal investigator? I hate to be contrary today, but I am not.
You're not? Oh, you're not?
No,
Okay.
I'm not well, I mean, I think the term of a paranormal investigator is somebody that actually brings the gadgets, walks up.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah, that's what I think.
Oh, I'm a researcher. I'm an author. I'm a storyteller.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're a storyteller and a researcher. Okay, so you know about paranormal investigations. You don't necessarily do them.
Oh, well, yeah. And I'm not sure how much I really do know about paranormal investigation. I haven't got, well, let's just put it that way. There's a reason I don't do it. I just am not convinced that it's a good way to prove anything. I am exposed to the logic of parapsychology. I do not call myself a parapsychologist, but I'm exposed to the way the subject thinks. And I'm exposed to world spirituality. And, but as far as running around the dark with cameras and trying to validate whether a building's haunted or not, no, I don't do that. I work with some people whom I really respect. And I think something with the right mind frame really can be understood with investigation, but not when they do it on TV. It's like what laboratory experiment is going to charge you $50 to run around in the dark? I mean, if they're really trying to figure something out, they don't open up the doors to the TV cameras. They don't open up the doors to the paying public, And I look, if there's I feel like the Godfather, it doesn't make a difference to me what a man does to make his living, but it's like if there's a market out there, sure, great, have fun. But if you're really trying to figure the whole thing out, like I am, I'm not a paranormal investigator, so sorry.
Hey, well, no, don't apologize. I'm sorry that I called you one. That's what I thought you were.
You didn't anger me, Virginia. You were simply, I'd love to know who told you that's what I was,
It's okay. It's okay. Now, you have ghost tours in Buffalo and East Aurora. Can you tell us about those? And when they're running?
Yeah.
Let's tell the audience when they're running.
Oh, they should really visit a new website we made up totally devoted to the ghost walks. It's called Mason Winfield Ghost Walks. That's what it is.
Really?
Mason Winfield Ghost Walks. It's simple, easy. It'll list our events. They'll be able to buy a ticket. But basically, these are walking tours from place to place in communities. They last 90 minutes typically, and they take, it's about a mile walking. And we talk about places that have gotten supernatural reports. And
now you have one in downtown Buffalo, right in the theater district, right?
Sure, yeah. That's a nifty one.
That's got to be fascinating. It's got to be fascinating.
Well, we think it is, yeah. But again, we're not going into buildings and looking for ghosts. We're walking from building to building. But that's the way I find it more interesting, because we're not just doing a heavy experience inside one building. We're talking about 15 of them. We're talking about history and folklore and architecture. So in other words, I think of us as sort of the backdrop to the paranormal investigators. Go with us, hear the history, hear the reports, hear the architecture, hear the folklore, the Native American stuff, hear that. Then go in and do your investigation, and now you get them both.
Interesting. And you also have a ghost tour in East Aurora, correct?
Yeah, East Aurora is where I live, and the Roycroft campus is marvelously interesting. It's got as many ghost stories. I mean, it's remarkably haunted according to the experience of individuals.
Really? I didn't know that, and I've been there. I had no idea.
It's a remarkable place. I think the first time in my life I had any idea that the Roycroft campus might be special was in a Christmas Eve conversation, probably 30 years ago, with a couple of guys and one of them was a handyman at the Roycroft Inn. And he said, this building is built with very unique and special architecture. The founder of it, Elbert Hubbard, the founder of the Roycroft community, was some kind of a mystic.
Really?
And by the way, the place is haunted. And those three fundamentals, architecture, occultism, and ghost stories, that is the basis of my study of Roycroft right now. And when people take that tour, they're going to be getting an awful lot of discussions of architecture and symbolism. And I can't think of any other tour in the county that would offer anything like it.
Really? Now, there's a lot of symbolism in the architecture in downtown Buffalo.
Yep.
That people are unaware of, like the Guarantee Building. Is the Guarantee Building on your ghost tour?
I'm actually writing about it in a book that'll be out within weeks called Buffalo's.
Your latest book that's supposed to come out at the end of 2024. You're writing about the Guarantee Building?
Among others, yeah. Yeah, the book is called Buffalo.
Wow, that's got to be fascinating. I studied the Guarantee Building when I was in college. I studied the architecture.
It's remarkable. There is sacred shape involved in it. I got a hold of drawings, and I studied them, mapped them out, because I got a sort of a working knowledge of sacred geometry. It's not expert level, but I've got a ballpark idea what's going on, what to look for. And you just realize what a splendid structure, and many of them we have here in Buffalo, and how many mysteries lie hidden within them. They're not just neat to look at from the outside. There are codes of geometry and shape and mathematics and symbolism hidden within them. And to take one of these things down just because you don't like it anymore and put up a Rite Aid or a red brick
parking lot or parking lot.
This is a tragedy against society. And
I agree. I agree, Mason.
I am writing about the Guarantee Building. I discuss ornamentation. I profile Louis Sullivan, his life, his relationship with Frank Lloyd Wright. I evaluate the Guarantee Building from many perspectives. Louis Sullivan, he was a Gael. His dad was an Irish dancer. And Sullivan...
Really? I didn't know this. This is interesting.
Yeah. Sullivan, like Frank Lloyd Wright. Now, Wright was a Welshman. He wasn't born in Wales, but his ancestry is all Welsh. He's very proud of it. And both of these guys were really into Celtic material. They were fascinated.
I didn't know that about Frank Lloyd Wright. All I know about Frank Lloyd Wright is really that he enjoyed the opposite sex, and he was a brilliant architect. Brilliant architect.
So do I, and I'm not an architect. But Wright was a notorious womanizer.
Yes, he was, but I was trying to be, diplomatic.
Yeah, he loved quickly and he tired. He loved passionately and he tired quickly. And but yet, Wright's houses are nicknamed he calls them Taliesin. That's the title of them. And Taliesin was the classic wizard poet for the Welsh Gaelic people.
I didn't know that. Oh,
Sure. His
really?
name,
This
yeah,
is
his name
fascinating.
Taliesin means shiny brow. And that, I'm working in an outdoor cafe, so please forgive me if there's any background noise.
Oh,
But
we're
shiny
fine. We're fine.
brow, it's shorthand for being a mystic, for being illuminated, for being above.
Oh,
the rest.
really? Oh, this is
Yeah.
fascinating. Oh, this
Well,
is Frank
sure.
Lloyd Wright.
Yes, and furthermore, Frank Lloyd Wright built his estate, Greycliff, well, for Darwin Mountain. He built that to align with the summer solstice sunrise, just like
Didn't know
Palm
this.
Beach. Yeah. Oh,
This
well,
is fascinating.
oh, I think you'll enjoy the book. I think there is a
I think
lot.
I will.
I've uncovered a lot of secrets about local architecture, but it's not just architecture. I talk about ghost stories, mysticism, occult conspiracy, Native American landscape tradition. There's a lot in the book, and it's not really that long. It's about a 65,000 word book, which is kind of short, but for my standards, but it's got a lot of art in it. And, the publisher and I were just debating a little bit today about a few things. It's taking a little more time than we thought, but it's a lot more work
That's
than we.
okay. That's okay. I mean, you're producing a work of art. I mean,
Well,
that's what
actually,
books are.
You know what's funny? I'm flattered if anybody thinks that about my stuff. I do the best I can, but the publishers, I bounced the idea with them about a year ago. Said, I think I've got this hidden hook on an understanding of Buffalo's architecture, Buffalo's buildings. There's a connection with ghost stories, and I think I can figure out. I think I can develop this, and some of there are a few other people around Western New York who do ghosts, and I've heard some of them mention sacred architecture. They don't seem to be able to develop it, and they'll all be able to after this book, because this book is a handbook. I just lay it out. This is what it is. This is what we call it. What its outlines are. But at any rate, the book I wrote was double the length the publisher wanted.
Oh.
Yeah, because he wanted it 100 pages, 8 by 11, with lots of art.
That's too short. That's too short.
Well, it's a time life style book, and they have tons of art. And so anyway, we just decided, let's make 2 books out of it.
Oh,
Yeah. So
interesting.
volume two will be coming probably in the spring. It's already written.
It's already written. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
we cut book 1 in half, and we cut the book I wrote in half and made it into book 1, and now we've got half of it left, and it's not as simple as that. You've got to do all the art, and you got to tailor the introduction and the conclusion again, and so there's a lot of work ahead, but yet the heavy lifting is done. So
now you were an English major, correct? In English literature.
Oh yeah. I was
So you are trained. You are trained in the literacy arts, in the written word. You are trained in it. You're what I'm trying to get across to our audience is that you're not just somebody who decided to write a book. You've been trained. You've been trained.
I have a master's degree in mostly British literature, and my undergraduate, I was technically an English major, but I had a lot of credits in the classics. All I had to do was file a petition, and I could have minored in classics.
Interesting.
And my master's degree is a real solid one. It wasn't a cupcake. I went to Boston College for that. They're Jesuits.
Yes, that is a very good school. Very good school.
No, it's not just a good school. It, at least then, was very traditional. They really made you work. You learned how to do research. And I was a long way from the best student they had, but yet I learned skills. A good master's, at least a good lit master's, you know how to, you're not really qualified for anything, but you learn skills. You can read and write the
Yes,
hell out of anything.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I seem to have the gift of becoming an armchair expert, not a real one, but an armchair expert on almost anything fairly quickly and strategically. You're never going to be a real expert without the same sacrifice and dedication that the true ones have made. But I can
Right.
get close enough to instruct the general, the man on the street, or I can get close enough to impart something useful to the average person that it's a really good skill. I wrote a book on the War of 1812. I knew very little about it. And I very quickly, strategically, and that book had some complications, but in general, I got pretty good at the War of 1812 pretty fast.
Yeah. Okay. The War of 1812. Yes. Yes. And Buffalo has a very rich history in the War of 1812, which a lot of people don't seem to recognize. So this book is really something that every Buffalonian should read.
A lot of Americans on our side don't, but Canadians have a much greater appreciation of this war. It was almost their war of national independence. I don't think the Americans were planning to take over Canada. I think there were a couple of big talking politicians who might have said something like that. But it's one of these things about history and politics, and like the Bible, you can find somebody somewhere that says exactly what you most want them to or what you least want them to. You can find somebody, some fool somewhere to say something. It doesn't mean everybody was planning to do that. But at any rate, yes, the War of 1812 was very largely a watery war. It was a hit run. It was fought mostly on water routes, forts, hit runs. The land fighting was along the Niagara. The Niagara frontier is where we had 3 sustained years of fighting, occasional battles, cannon shots across the border, raids, arsons, knife fights, snipings, raids. This was where it all happened. And it kind of cracks me up in a way how much superstition and supernaturalism is associated with Gettysburg, for instance. Yeah, I'll give it to you. That was big. That was a big weekend. Gettysburg was a long weekend. Yeah. Western New York, the Niagara frontier had 3 years of constant conflict.
Yes.
And everything 1 mile from either side of the river on both sides was torched. Arsons, thefts, massacre. Yeah, it wasn't a pretty picture, but it told you a little bit about the decrepitude of the human spirit, and sometimes, and a lot of it told you about the nobility. There was a lot of heroes, men, women, both sides, noble people, both sides. It shows you what a tragedy what war really is. Lose so much time.
We have had a lot of conflict in this country. So when people tell me that we're in a time of great conflict, what I say is we've always had conflict, and we've always gotten over it and moved forward. So I'm not too concerned about it, with our contemporary society, because we've always moved forward. We've always moved forward. We've always been okay.
Yeah, we probably will if we don't have World War III.
Right, exactly. But out of great conflict can come great peace. So call me a Pollyanna, Mason, but
I admire that, and I wish I mean, that's great. Stay with that, sister. I hope you turn out to be righter than I am.
I hope so.
I think we're going to be all right. I think before long we'll pull back from the brink, but I don't see why we have to get so close, and I don't understand why some of our political class are not as serious about it as I think they ought to be.
Oh, good point. Oh, good point, Mason. Good point. Good point. Now, you also have a project which I really couldn't find out much information about. It's called the Spirit Way Project, and it's about
Yeah.
it's devoted to the preservation of the supernatural. What exactly is this project, and what does it entail?
Sure. Well, the Spirit Way Project is a loose group of researchers who are also friends.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And we're diverse not only in our ethnicities, we're diverse in our skills, but we are devoted to teaching, interpreting, and preserving the supernatural and paranormal legacy of Western New York. And yeah, and to understand the legacy of a region, you have to understand subjects in general. You know, you got to have a broader tapestry to compare something local with. You got to know but actually we have a lot of projects on board. I think we're going to be doing some filming, and we've done a few
really?
podcasts. Yeah, we've done a few podcasts, but a lot of my projects, I bite off more than I can chew. Sometimes.
Don't we all?
Well, I do it, and we'll get to a situation like right now, October, where, you know, that is the busy month of my year, and very often I'll get into a project that just has a deadline. It's timely, like finishing a book.
I'm gonna go on.
And I'm tapped out. That's it. Every waking hour that isn't, you know, devoted to R&R, which will be brief, is devoted to this one thing. And it's because it's got a deadline. It can't, like a book, for instance, it can't get any better after it's published. So every sacrifice you can make before that, you know,
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Spirit of the Project, we have made a few really interesting podcasts.
Really?
Yeah. And with some of the guests. And honestly, I am so tech illiterate. You remember how much trouble I had? I know you guys thought I was chickening out, but you know how much trouble I had getting onto this damn Zoom?
We didn't think that. Nobody thought you were chickening out, Mason.
Yeah, because the ghost hunter is not scared of things, you know. He leads on the inside. He fears nothing. But I think we're really upping our game, because my Ghostwalks company has a new PR person who is really fabulous. I've never worked with anybody like this chick. It's like I've worked with people in the past who give me a honey-do list. Okay, Mason, we really got to do this. And I go, look, do you realize what happens when 5 people give me a honey-do list? You know, I need you to make it happen, not tell me what to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point, Mason.
I need people that make things happen, and this one does. She's helping us out endlessly. Yeah, I've started making audiobooks. I don't have any done yet, but it's really
good. So this is something people can look forward to. It's an audiobook, yes.
Oh, it's a big world out there, and I ain't standing still. But we are not, Virginia, anymore in a world where a lot of people buy hard copy books and go home and read them. People, they don't read as much, and they don't buy as many books. All the dynamics of the book business have changed.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. We've still got bibliophiles, but yet a lot of people who have good minds and would be interested in it's too much effort, and they're too busy to sit down and read a book. They'll listen to an audiobook when they're driving or mopping up around the house, or, you know, so I think if you've got a gripping subject matter and you're a good reader, you'll do well with that. And I think the first book I'm reading as an audiobook is my fiction book on the wizard. It's called The
You know,
Prince Air.
the Prince of Air, the Prince of Air, right? Is that the name of it? The Prince of Air.
The Prince of the Air. Yeah, it's the memoirs
Prince
of a
of the Air, and he's not a spellcaster. I remember reading about it that he doesn't do spells or anything like that. What does he do?
Well, he's got a couple of aptitudes that are exaggerations of psychic abilities. Yeah, they're grander than what you'd run into at the laboratories of the ASPR, the American Society for Psychical Research. They're above most of the famous psychics you've read about, but yet they're not Harry Potter. Of course, I'll tell you this, he's always mocking out Harry Potter too, not as a book or anything, but just, this is not what it's really like. And incidentally, I think Harry Potter did a lot of good for literature in our day. I mean, it got kids.
I think so too. I think so. It got kids reading.
And it also is a triumph of, in a way, the Western imagination, because J.K. Rowling was taking mostly figments of Mediterranean and Northwest European, mostly the mythology, and fictionalizing them and fancifying them in a delicious way. So I think she
did a good job. She did a good job.
I think she did a lot of good for literacy. And, when somebody does good work in the name of a good cause, I just take my hat off and go, way to go.
Well, she made a lot of sacrifices as well. She wasn't always eating well, let's say.
I know that.
She really sacrificed for her art.
Well,
she really did.
She used the opportunity she had to create something really nifty. And I mean, she probably had an idea she was onto something. I mean, as she was writing, she had to be feeling, wow, I got this, I mean, my first book, Shadows of the Western Door, 1997, it was not the national hit that Harry Potter was by any means, but in regional terms, that book did dynamite. And I'm still
did it really?
Print.
Oh, good. Wonderful.
Still in print. 27 years, still in print. Multiple versions of it.
That in itself speaks volumes that it's still in print. That
well,
speaks
when
volumes.
I was writing it, I just knew this is cool stuff. And nobody else is out there doing this. So I had that feeling about the book too. So I'm sure J.K. Rowling did about Potter. And it's very hard to get mainstream published. You got a real big publisher. It's hard to get any kind of publishing 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Now it's different. We've got all the self-publishing options. There are what they call vanity publishers who, that's shorthand for you give them money, they print your book for you.
Right. And but you can get your book published on Amazon now. I mean,
anybody. Yeah. And that's really the stigma has gone out of the self-publishing. There are people who probably never should have been published, who are published, they publish themselves. And yet some of the time there's some pretty good writers and some pretty
time you have some very good writers. There's a poet. There's a poet in Western New York named Alberto Capis, and he published a book of his poetry. It's fabulous.
Oh, wow. I would look forward to seeing that. I wish him the best of luck.
It's like famous. The poetry is fabulous. And it really, jars your mind. But he's self-published. And so the stigma wouldn't be there for him, so it shouldn't be there for other people. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
well, right. For some really talented people, they just fall between the cracks of the publishing industry. They're just, the publishing industry can be, it's tricky to reach sometimes because the publishers are giving you signals. And if you can't understand the signals, you're going to keep making the same mistake. I mean, very seldom, right? Very seldom. I mean, you get a rejection letter from publisher. They just go, we're not, we just can't take your book right now. But they don't tell you why. And you have to be able to figure out why you got fired before you got hired. And I'll tell you something else. When you switch genres, it all changes. Like I could write local paranormal research, or even, just research surveys of supernatural paranormal material. If I were interested to do that, I could do that easily the rest of my career, and I'd never be without a book being published. But that's too easy now, especially with the explosion of the internet. When I did my first book, Shadows, it was tough finding good supernatural material in the upstate. I mean, you were going to historical societies and museums and family libraries, and you're writing letters to historians, and you were digging through old newspaper files, and it was the real research, and it changed.
It was grueling. Yes, it was grueling.
Yeah, it was. And it changed in about 5 years. It had all changed because the internet had become a tool. And there were a lot of these books out there for you to pick from. But the long and the short of it is that kind of research is so easy for me now. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm writing fiction and really trying to get to the roots of the understanding, like the book on architecture. I'm very proud of that. And it's pretty much well, we'll see how good it is, but it's pretty much an original theory, that there is this connection between architecture and supernatural folklore and classic temple architecture. Why would there be this connection? And, I think it'll arouse some interest. We'll see.
Well, I think that it's a natural step for people to take. That, of course, architecture has to do with all those things. Because it is a reflection of society, and the supernatural has always been with us, and people have always been fascinated by it, as far as I'm concerned. Would you agree?
Well, I certainly wouldn't disagree. My way of looking at it sort of is that there's something makes people say they see things in certain places. And I'm not saying they don't see things. I'm just saying the only thing I can prove to you about a ghost story or a ghost report is that it is exceptional human experience. Why do Americans shout at each other from 3 feet away sometimes? I don't get it. But there is some factor, I think, in certain places in the world that make people have unusual, exceptional experience. They see things to a much greater degree in some places than they do others. And some of these...
I would agree with that. With that.
Well, it's incontestable. And some of these places they see things are indoors. They're buildings, temples, maybe large outdoor monuments. They're man-made, human-made structures. And
yes,
this, to me, bears a bit of analysis. So that's a little bit of what the processing of Buffalo's occult architecture is about.
Fascinating. It's fascinating. Fascinating. Now, in 2022, you wrote a book about the Ghost Hunter's Journal. Was that fiction or nonfiction?
It's fictionalized experience. Let's just say either things that happened to me or things I knew of happening and learned about them from witnesses. They were either cases that were too incomplete. A story for something, it's got to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And they've all got to be coherent. They've all got to fit. A lot of the stuff I come across through research, I don't know how it started. Some of the time, I know how it started and how it went, and I don't know how it ended. Because
Uh-huh.
because these cases can just die on you. They can just dry up. People quit talking to you. You know, they talk to other people who tell them we're the guru, you know, and it's a funny world out there. But at any rate, the cases and frankly, some of the cases, sorry, we got a loud truck here. Some of the cases that I fictionalized in Ghost Hunters Journal were too hot to write about.
Really?
Or, yeah, they were going to hurt somebody. They were going to give away sensitive information. So I really fictionalized a lot of the stuff. If I say it happened in a city, it was a remote little country cottage. If I said it was a little girl, it was an old man. You know, I mean, really, I just wanted to tell a story and sort of funked it all up.
Okay, now what about the TV show you were on, the Phantom Tour? What was that about?
Sure. Well, about 20 years ago, a very illustrious studio of filmmakers, Full Circle Studios, they decided, why don't we do something a little bit ghostly? And
Really?
I think there were a lot of people they could have contacted, but for some reason they thought I was the most prominent. So they contacted me, and I'm a researcher, you know, so I've got files of stuff. So we had a meeting, and, you know, when it's media, the average person would be shocked how media can operate sometimes. I mean, we decided exactly what 13 sites we were going to put into that program in about half an hour. I mean, we looked at my list and asked this and asked that. And so, and then we traveled around and we made a film out of it. And it did really well. It was shown on TV a bunch of times, and then it was made into a DVD, and it sold very well. And they were really nice people. They're really gifted. They're really smart. It was just a riot. It was just a privilege to work with Full Circle Studios. And
are they still in business? Full Circle Studios? Are they still in business?
I believe. Well, I know at least one of the gentlemen, Kevin Crosby, has retired. He's all friends of mine. They're all good guys. He's living in Charleston, South Carolina, and I actually was. Yeah, and every time I'm in South Carolina near Charleston, I look him up and we, you know, hang out with him and his wife and whoever I'm with. And let me think. I think one of the other principals, Jim Fisher, I think is still with him. And he's one of the funniest guys. They're all funny, but he's really funny. And he's a very gifted filmmaker. And it would be fun to do something with them again. I wouldn't want to do the same thing. I'd want to do something really... I'd like to do something with Spirit Way Project, because we do not have a top 40 approach to supernatural research. We don't do it like TV. We may incorporate a little bit of what TV does, but no, we're on to multi-generational, multicultural perspectives, studies of the landscape, feng shui. You know, I mean, the Spirit Way Project, our general motto is, if you can think of an avenue for the truth, you got to try it. If you can think of it, you got to try it, which includes surveillance ghost hunting. I mean, I'm not sure what that proves much of the time, but yet it is an avenue to the truth. And I would never say that we shouldn't go into buildings and study them. I honestly think we should. I just think we got to watch I'm sorry I picked an outdoor cafe, but
it's okay. You're fine, Mason. You're fine.
Such is my life in October. You know, I'm busy. But at any rate, I think there's a lot of potential out there that that television right now is not exploiting. And if you know the way media works, I think they say they want to find a new formula, but yet
But they don't really.
they do the same old thing that's worked. And because I've done enough
Right.
TV and media and all that, and they know me by now. I'm not going to talk me into doing anything, but yet they'll very often come to me with a formula. This is our plan. And what part of the program are you going to do the exorcism? And I go, guys, yeah, I don't do that stuff. It's like,
Well, you know what I was told about exorcisms? Now, I don't know if it's true, but I was told that every Catholic diocese has 2 exorcists on staff, that they have 2 priests that's what they are able to do. They are able to do exorcisms. Every diocese.
I'm pretty sure.
In the world, mind you.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure every diocese has 1. But the prayer of exorcism, it's a short prayer. It's not dramatic, and you can find it. The trick is you get how, when, and where. This is a subject. It's a very delicate subject, but
it is.
You're absolutely right. I had an old buddy who would have been the exorcist for the Diocese of Western New York.
Really? Okay. All right. So you know what I know. Good, beautiful. Okay.
Well, I don't sell your knowledge short, but I just basically had a chance to interact with a guy who would have been the source around here. And he never did an exorcism. Yeah, he never did an exorcism in Western New York because it wasn't that he didn't believe in it. It was that he never encountered a case that he was fairly sure was a case of legitimate demonic possession.
Right, that an exorcism was needed. Exactly.
Right. There's a big difference between a haunted house and somebody's 12-year-old needing to be delivered. Big difference.
Right.
And it's a disaster if you do the wrong medicine at the wrong time. It's
Well, a lot of people will jump to conclusions and they will fantasize about what an exorcism is and why it's needed. I remember when I was running a after-school program for at-risk urban youth on the west side of Buffalo for a church. Well, it wasn't for the church, but we were part of the church. We were housed at a church. And I got a phone call from one of our parents asking me if there was somebody at the church that could do an exorcism on her child. And her child did not need an exorcism. There was nothing wrong with that child. That child was just being a 6-year-old. And people don't know what demon possession really is. And they have these preconceived ideas and they're adamant about it. Oh no, my child needs an exorcism. And it's not warranted. And it's not warranted.
I'm glad to hear your sense of responsibility about this because it is a massive responsibility. And some of my conflicts with some people who call themselves paranormal investigators has been because I thought they were being too fast and loose with concepts of demonic possession.
Right, exactly.
And like they're trying to go Hollywood, but meanwhile, this is some kid's life, So, hey, Virginia, remember we said we were probably going to be on about an hour?
Yes.
Yeah. Why don't we just do another program someday if that's all right with you?
Fine. That's fine with me. I have no problem with that, Mason. I don't have a problem with that at all. Not at all.
Yeah. This is my month.
You have a lot of vast knowledge on this topic, and it's really quite interesting. I must say, and I appreciate you coming on the show. I really do. I really appreciate it.
I wish we had made our appointment for a different month than October because October is just a crazy month for me. I'm very, very stretched between dang. And, some people have actually said to me, wow, when October's over and, it must be a letdown for you that, you know, you're not so busy and people aren't following you around. I go, man, are you kidding? I'm lucky anybody, anywhere, anytime is interested in anything I have to say. But also, if I was this busy the rest of the time, like I'm a 1 month wonder right now. I mean, October is my month, you know, and if I was this busy the rest of the time, I'd start acting big. Yeah, if I was a 12-month wonder, I'd start acting really conceited. But you caught me. You caught me the way I am, Virginia, and I'm delighted. And thanks so much for having me on. And we won't be straight.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so very, very much, Mason. And are you having, before you go, are you having the Witches Ball this year?
Well, I'm not the one doing it. They're the very capable, responsible friends we have over at Buffalo Rising magazine. They're the ones who are putting it on. And it's a killer party, and it's way beyond my organizational powers. But they come to me. Yeah, oh yeah, I could pull that off. Those guys are professionals. I just write books once in a while, you know. But it's a knockout Halloween party, and they come to me and they go, Mason, would you help us put on the Psychic Lounge? And I always say, of course, because, you know, they're wonderful people. It's great to work with them, and I'm always flattered to be included. And it's fun, you know. I mean, and by now I've got a bunch of buddies.
I heard it's really a good time. I really heard.
It's outrageous.
And I heard about the Psychic Lounge from another medium. She was telling me about it, and I heard it really is a good time. But you know what? I've never been. I've been asked to do readings, you know, because I am a medium, to do readings at the Witches Ball, and it's never really quite worked out for me to do it. This year I'll be in Sedona for Halloween, so
cool.
So I won't be around.
Hang out with them shapeshifters.
Well, I'm like really excited. I've never been to Sedona, and I have a friend that lives in Mesa, Arizona. And when I suggested we go to Sedona on Halloween before, she was kind of like really hesitant. But this time she's like, yeah, let's go. So I'm going to go to Mesa.
Hey, give me an update. We'll talk after Halloween. Give me an update. But, you know, as far as the Witches Ball goes, I limit the size of the Psychic Lounge because I want every reader to have a great night. You know, I know I could probably fill the thing up and then nobody has a nice evening. So I want to pick the best of the best. And
that's good. That's good. That's good.
And everybody has fun.
And when you have too many readers, everybody's miserable and the energy goes down.
It's exploitation. It isn't fair to anybody. And yeah, I'd make some more money if I did that, but that's not the whole thing. Let's make a great event for the participants, for the Witches Ball people themselves, and let's just make the best event we possibly can. And that's just my philosophy. So look, Virginia, happy Halloween out in Sedona, and you know, I look forward to catching up with you when you're back.
All right. Well, thank you, Mason. Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you to Think Twice Radio for having us tonight. And for producing the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a service. So be good, guys. Till next time.
All right. Thank you, Mason. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.